Hey there, bitches. Welcome back to Anne World Peace. I am your host, Maggie Gehlsen-Burnett. I'm so excited today. We have another former pageant girl joining us, and yeah, it's just the best when I get to talk to somebody who has been where I've been, It's great. And we get to gab and talk a bunch of shit about pageants, and I just love it so much. But before we get into today's guest, you know the drill here. A couple of housekeeping items. The first is that Anne World Peace is now on Patreon. It's patreon.com/AnneWorldPeace. This is a way you can support the show on a monthly basis while gaining access to exclusive content. The second way you can support the show is through Spotify listener support. This is done directly through Spotify if that is your listening avenue of choice. And of course, the last way you can support the show is by doing what you're doing, by listening and, maybe sharing this with friends and family or on social media. Let's get into today's guest, who I'm so excited for this one. We have Cari Anne Cashon joining us. She is an entrepreneur specializing in e-commerce and Amazon selling. Under her company, Cashon Enterprises, she has created multiple brands on Amazon, including the Pageant Crown Box brand, The Traveling Miss. In addition to managing her own brands, she has also led the e-commerce departments for multi-million-dollar brands such as Hoover, Dirt Devil, and Werner Ladders. I met Cari Anne through Instagram probably 5 or 6 years ago, and we were both really just in the thick of our pageant careers and really just vying for our state titles and doing basically every single thing that we could to achieve that. And we talk about that on the show today. And so it's amazing to catch up with her and just kind of see how much our lives have changed and see how, much better off we are maybe for maybe not having won those titles. So it was such a treat to catch up with her and to just learn more about her life outside of pageantry. And yeah, it was a delight to have her. So without further ado, let's welcome Cari Anne to the show. Cari Anne, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to have you on the show. You're actually my second pageant girl, former pageant title holder who has joined the show, which is, sort of ironic, I guess, because the show is named after my experiences in pageantry. But so I'm super excited to chat more with all of the pageant girls of the world. So let's get started by let's do this first. So let's talk about your start in the world of pageantry, how you got there, and ultimately where it led you at the end.
Yeah, was not one of those that grew up with like the Miss America mom that like got them in the teen program. Like that's a common path. That was not my path. I was like a gymnast most of my life and then transitioned into cheerleading. And so my whole life was like gymnastics and then eventually cheer. And so my goal was always like, I want to be a Division I cheerleader. And you probably get this being a Division I twirler, but that was my only path. Like I did not do pageants. Like not even on my radar. My mom made me play great piano growing up. So I hated that shit, but not related to pageants. Like she was just like, smart girls play piano and you have to do this. And I was like, this sucks. But like definitely not a pageant girl. And in fact, I was quite the tomboy growing up. And so ended up actually going to the University of Oklahoma, becoming a cheerleader. And within my first year, I had already had a number of concussions going into OU, but I got another one, did not tell anyone about it because I did not want to sit out because that's kind of how it goes, and then got another one the following week. And so like couldn't hide it, like that everyone knew, the athletic trainer knew, the doctors knew. Very long story short, it was a really tumultuous recovery. It took a long time. Like freshman year of college, I'm having to wear sunglasses indoors, trying to like meet people. And they're like, why is this girl wearing sunglasses for the entire time? Like couldn't remember people's names, couldn't talk very well, like just a slew of problems. And so it definitely like shook my world in the sense of this, like the path I've been on, I can no longer be on. The OU athletic doctor was like, there's not a single chance I'm going to release you to cheer again, like the next year. And I was like, where do I go from here? Like, this has been my life, my whole life. This has been my goal. And it's just like stripped away very quickly. And I was in a sorority, just like I knew you were, and I had a lot of sorority sisters that were in pageants, number of Miss Oklahomas, and someone mentioned Miss OU, and they were like, well, if you don't even win, you get scholarship money. And like, I didn't have any scholarship. I wasn't cheering again. And so I was like, excuse me, what all do you need to do? Like, how do I sign up? And they were like, well, the biggest thing is like, you have to have a talent because it's Miss America. And that's always the struggle of people that haven't done pageants is they don't have a talent. And I was like, oh, like I played piano my whole life. And they're like, no shit. Like,
Yeah, perfect.
So I did Miss OU. That was my first one. And I mean, I don't remember exactly how much scholarship I got that first time, but like had a good time, was starting to like regain skills I had lost with my concussions, like a lot of speaking skills. It was just like practice. And I didn't really know anyone in it. And it was just like a great opportunity for me to be like, okay, this is my like this is almost like my like therapy, like my physical therapy, my occupational therapy to like get back to normal, get some scholarship and like meet some cool people. And then just like kept going with it. And eventually just was like, man, this is like a great opportunity. I really fell in love with just like the volunteering side, the like getting involved in your community side, being able to speak at events in your like super small town. Like I love that kind of stuff. So yeah, long story short, wasn't a pageant girl, but just like fell into it. And then I was like, okay, there's some stuff here that like is really exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. I find that there is a mutual sentiment for a lot of pageant girls where they sort of quote fall into pageants in a way. And it might happen when they're older, it might happen when they're younger, whenever, but that is definitely how it happened for me and how it happened for a lot of my friends who did pageants. So you were a first runner-up, second runner-up to Miss
Third. It's always like confusing because you're like, was I fourth or was I fifth?
Right, 100%. Yeah.
But no, I was third runner-up.
Okay, and that was in 2018, correct? Is that right?
2017, I believe.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because we got connected through Instagram, I think, because of our mutual interview coaches, I believe at the time.
Yep.
Jess and Michelle. So that's a decent chunk of time that you spent competing. That's a good chunk of years that you spent competing. And sort of pageantry almost became this thing that after you have this sort of identity crisis of like, I can't cheer anymore. I can't do the thing that people know me for. I'm going to start doing this other thing. And then it sort of felt, as sort of an outsider looking in, that people came to know you for that thing then. So when that all ended, how did you know it was the time to hang it up? Like, did you age out? Was it, a decision of this just isn't for me anymore? It's not working. What kind of led you to that moment?
I would say this parallels. I don't know if I'm getting to the question that you ask other guests of like the unraveling. I have watched the show. I would say this answer is going to be the same of that question, which is like, so the first year I went to Miss Kansas, I was third runner up. And that year I don't want to say I wasn't trying to win, but I was like, I know this game. Like, I know it enough to know, like, I don't know it all to think I can win. Like, I'm going to like test the waters, see how this works and see if I want to keep doing it and actually like dive in. And I would say like that's kind of why this is the answer to possibly like this big unraveling is I would say my entire life has been predicated on achievement. Like I want to accomplish this and I become very fanatical and obsessed. And like, that's how I find my own value. That's how I find happiness and fulfillment is in achievement. And so like, I went in the first year of Miss Kansas, like, I'm not expecting to achieve this. I'm going to obviously not try, but like, I'm not going gung ho of like laser focus. Like, this is my goal. So then after that first year, that's when I was like, it's time. Like, this is my goal.
Like crack cocaine.
Seriously. Like, it was like, no one can stop me. Like, I am on this path. Like, there wasn't a rice cake I didn't eat instead of a chip. There wasn't a day I didn't run, like there wasn't a gym workout I skipped. Like, it was that time. And I think one reason like I've always been like that in my life is it is a level of control. It's like, if I'm making the decision to want to achieve this, if you know that's the output, the input I can control. I'm going to work harder than everyone. I'm going to be more effective. I'm going to study more, like whatever it is, I can control my hard work and I will outwork anyone. And I've always believed that. And I've always seen that to be true with what I choose to do. And so OU, it was kind of this unraveling of it wasn't in my control. Like this is a literal mental, physical ailment. Like you can't fix. But this was like a path that I was like, okay, this is now in my control again. And so to answer your question, and the unraveling is like the second year going in, knowing like I said, there wasn't a rice cake I didn't need. Like I had done everything. I was in top 5 the year before. And the next year I didn't make top 5, I made only top 10.
Oh my God. I don't think I knew that.
Oh, and it was just, it's hard to, like, at the time, I didn't really understand it. And I'm sure you know this, like stupid, like forums, like the Voy Forums.
I was just thinking of Voy Forums before we recorded this episode.
You know, like it's the stupidest thing, but it's like, it does give you confidence where I'd log in every day and it's like, everyone is voting that I'm going to win.
Absolutely.
And then to have that moment where like, I'm going to be in top 5 because I know I put in the work and I know like, in relativity, like I know it's worth being in the top 5. What I did last year was nothing. What I've done this year is leaps and bounds better. And to not have it happen was my unraveling. It was my unraveling of like, there is no longer control over your input and the output. I worked so much harder. I was better in every way that second year, and I did worse. And it was just this, I mean, it was years of unraveling of like, it took years and years and years to just even like come to grips with that. Because like my entire life, it's like you can control how much you work your ass off, what you do that other people aren't doing, like how early you get up, what you're studying. And I did worse. It just became this like, I don't know, just this weird dynamic that I was dealing with internally. And so to answer your question, after that, I pretty much was done with pageants. So I thought I aged out, which makes all of it even worse, because like if I wouldn't have thought I was aging out, I maybe would have had a different perspective. But it's like, this was my last chance, and I have to come to grips with this weird reality that like I did worse, even though I put in all this work. And then Miss America that year like changed the rules or whatever, they increased it. But it was like in October or November, and I was like, I already know I can't do what I need to in this amount of time. And I was just like spiraling. And so I technically did compete after that one other year in Oklahoma. I moved back to Oklahoma. But like to say like I could be like, I don't want to say I didn't try, but like I was just in such a like spiral of why work, like why like, you know, keep not going out with friends just to like save water weight when you're not even going to make the top 5 when you made the top 5 the year before and you did go out with your friends, you know? Like,
yeah.
And so basically like that last year that I ended up in top 10 was like pretty much my last year in pageants mentally. And it just like ever since then, and it's taken obviously years for me to like look back and realize like, wow, that was such a pivotal moment. But it was, because it was just like, so why work at all? Like why work hard when these people that didn't, I shouldn't say these people, like obviously I respect all of the women I compete with. I just mean like I did more and I achieved less than the year before. And it was just a really hard reality.
I so relate to that. And I think it's worth saying here that I think it's fair, you know, in hindsight, I look back and 5 years ago, I thought my life ended because I was first runner up to Miss Iowa. And I was so sure that I had put in the work. I knew I worked harder than everybody else.
Yep.
And I think that is a fair statement to make. Like I agree. I knew that I had worked harder than any other person that was competing. And I don't say that to be a dick. I don't say that to be, you know, to be like, I'm, you know, like a total narcissist. I don't say that in that sense. I say that because it's the truth. And I say that because I have evidence to back it up. And I think in your situation, it's totally fair to say that you worked harder than probably most of the people that you competed with. And, you know, I think like another aspect of it that's so funny to me is especially that year, for some reason, 2017, 2018 was such an interesting time in the Miss America organization,
Oh
because
God.
I felt like I had never worked harder in my life than I did in those 2 years. And I mean, really for anything, like, let's be honest, like
Agreed.
I,
Agreed.
I worked so hard for those 2 years, and I am still waiting to see if there are fruits of my labor that like would maybe come after that. Like,
Yeah.
because I have yet to find something that I was so hell-bent on getting that I worked that hard for.
Totally
And
agree.
like I think that's the mind fuck, right? Is that
Exactly.
in pageantry, it almost feels as though, and for a lot of my friends that I made through pageantry, the less you try, the better you do, which
Yep.
is, hilarious, because then it's like you get into this whole mind fuck with yourself of like, okay, if I just do less this year, if I just be more chill, if I'm the chill girl this year,
Yep.
maybe it'll be my time. And then
Yep.
you don't win. And then you're like, okay, well, that didn't work. So now I've got to be the total control freak. And it's like there is no in between. It's total black or white.
Yep.
And that's where I think I've never met a pageant girl who was serious about it, who really wanted it, and who was so dedicated to the program and to her mission of becoming a state title holder. I have never met one who wasn't a total and complete fucking control freak. Like, I
Yeah.
don't have a single friend who I competed with who was not a total fucking nut job when we were competing.
Think
Like,
of the competition we're in. It's this weird archaic thing of the perfect woman from a
yes.
very long time ago that
Yeah.
like we're not competing to be like the DJ at Coachella that like can hang out with everyone and like vibe. Like like think of the competition we're in. You think the chill girl that's like not taking it seriously is like like
Yeah.
it's a weird, like perplexing thing to think of like the competition itself, how it started, how a lot of people do view it like very archaic, like just like, yeah, you would think the chill girls aren't gonna win the competition in which you have to be perfect like a little doll on a pedestal.
Exactly. That's
Perplexing. It's
amazing.
mind fucking. It really is.
Yeah, it totally is. I think about pageants every single day of my life, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about them in some capacity. And, I think, I'm still working on that. I hope to someday not think about them as much as I do now.
We all
But it,
are.
it is really like totally mind-boggling to me that the person I am now even allowed myself to like do the things I did then. It really is just such a mind fuck. So, that sort of brings me to another topic I would love to talk about with you, which is you created a business based off of essentially your time in pageantry, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So, what did you learn from building that business, and has it been, as kind of a twofold part to this question, like, has it been difficult to sort of separate that part of your identity now that you own a business that is surrounds pageantry in a sense? Like, talk about that a
100%.
little bit.
100%. The answer to that is 100%. And so just to briefly describe, like I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur. I was raised by like very innovative small business entrepreneurs, have always been a part of me. Like I was inventing things when I was like 10. I sold school supplies out of my locker in fourth grade. Like always been a business girly, like always been inventing, innovating, like entrepreneur. So when I got into pageants, like the first year, I kept seeing that as a problem. It's like people were like, there's nothing to carry our crown and sash in that doesn't pick. And I was like, cool, cool, cool. Tell me more.
Yeah.
And so I started drawing up ideas and I would show them. And very long story short, ended up, making it a reality. But, it's been almost 8 years now. And it's been one of the absolute biggest blessings of my life. Like starting that business, I was in college, I was, bootstrapping. I signed up to be an Uber driver because I was like, I'm out of money at this point. Like, and then finally like made a little bit more to keep it going. But like, it's been such a blessing. But at the same time, exactly what you're saying. Like now that I just turned 30, I'm married now. I am not involved in pageants. Like I, have tried to compartmentalize a lot of different things in my life. Like that is something I really struggle with. Is like to this day, I'm an entrepreneur. I still run that business. I've been starting other businesses, but that one in particular, there is some mental wall almost that doesn't, I'll put it this way, it doesn't feel the same as when I'm working on my other brands. When I'm working on my other brands, it's this like childlike wonder, it's this excitement, it's this like really raw, like just like very jovial. And every time I'm working on Traveling Miss, I'm not saying I don't enjoy it, it's just a different feeling. And I would attribute that to like, I'm no longer in this world. You know, like when you're having to like market and advertise and respond to comments and literally deal with people still in that space one-on-one, which I have no, obviously, like resentment, or like I have no judgment on. People could be like, I have a business in this and like I support them. It's just having been so far removed from my own personal journey, it's not the same as my others. And so I like, to be honest, my goal is to sell that business, that brand. So if any of your listeners want to buy, if
anybody wants to buy the Traveling Miss,
it can be bought. Can be bought. But it's not a bad thing. It's just like it is a different thing of like, it's really hard to fully move on with new phases of life when you have to be in the weeds of that industry and that community regularly. And it's not because I don't love them, and it's not because I don't, have any ill will. It's just, it's really hard to move on when you're like still having to text your ex,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so much of what I say, my healing journey in terms of working through what I'll describe as the trauma that pageantry caused me, because I think that's what it was. I think so much of that was being afforded the option to have distance between myself and the industry, and really being able to say, nope, I'm not going to follow this anymore on Instagram. I'm not going to watch Miss America this year. I'm not going to support this local program. I'm not going to, whatever. I think so much of that, I recognize my privilege in that, because I know that that's not always the case for people. Some people are so embedded and ingrained in that industry that they don't have that opportunity. So I think for me, that was the distance factor was what made that possible. So I can imagine that without the distance being there, that would be exponentially harder to like put a block between you and this industry that in some sense probably, you may have felt did you wrong in some way, or, or like in some capacity, which, I could be speculating there, but I think that would be incredibly challenging. So
like, I see the same thing with like, I know a lot of women that can't get away from it. I shouldn't say like, it's not like I'm trying to say can't get away from it. Like it's this like dark cloud, but just people
there's definitely like, pros and cons. Yeah.
Like people trying to move on that are, our age, that are meeting their spouse, that are thinking about starting a family. Like, it's just a different phase of life. I know a lot of women in that like they can't get away from it because their families. It's like their mom got them in it, and their mom's now on the board of local, and then they their cousin runs that local, and like it just, I know a lot of women that I still see really ingrained in it, that I know I'm like, I don't think you want to be there. And it's I think it's because there's family ties too. And so I would say in that sense, I think you and I are fortunate too. Like I saw this side, but as I said, it can be bought.
Another plug.
Yeah,
for sure. I'm curious to know what you, if any, do you foresee yourself like having an involvement or relationship with like that world again? I think that's something I'm definitely exploring on my own now, because I finally went back to, I watched Miss Iowa this past summer. I went and
I saw I started reading your blog post.
And it was a really interesting experience. It was very eye-opening, I'll say. And I think in part relatively cathartic to a degree. But I think after that I was asked to judge a local pageant in Iowa, and I was sort of like, I was a little skeptical at first. I was sort of like, I don't really know if like I am the best person for this job. But, I went back and did it, and it was like at my alma mater for my high school. And, so it was a good experience, but I think there's definitely parts of me that are still trying to figure that out for sure. So I'm curious to know if you feel the same.
I haven't thought like very deeply on it, but I do have similar experiences to you where like I did a mock interview. Like I got asked from one of my old directors to do a mock interview like probably like 5 months ago. The girl actually did very, very well. So it's like one of those my interview questions. But like I have no interest in like actively seeking out like when is Miss Kansas this year, and how do I get tickets and how do I fly, and but like on a similar path, like I don't hold any ill will against people there. Like it's not like I'd be like, man, I really gotta like prove to so and so that I made it out and they really screwed me or what, like
right.
But like I think one thing that it sounds like probably you and I have in common is I think one thing I really liked about the Miss America program in particular is I loved being from a small town in, well, I don't know if you consider the Midwest, but like Oklahoma, Kansas, but like whatever, being a small town where you really feel not only like important, but you just really feel involved.
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece that like I'm never gonna knock. Like the fact that you were asked to judge in your town where like you have so many memories, you have so many ties of like what made you you. That's the kind of stuff I love. And to be honest, fell in love with Miss America. Is like someone from Ponca City, Oklahoma, like me, could be Miss America. And it means talking to your local pastors and talking to your local Kiwanis clubs and all these people that think the world of you and you're trying to be the best for them. And I think that's one thing like I'm never gonna knock. Like if one reason I answer the call of like, you want to be a mock judge, and it's like, yeah, because I know my director Tracy and she's awesome. And like her and I, like she did so much for me and I did, I try to help her out. And so I think there's that piece. But as far as like really getting involved, I have no interest. If someone comes knocking, I will answer. I love to help out people that have helped me in the past. But I think that there's that piece that like still is alive in the program that is beautiful. I think that is like people from small towns that like, people from like where we grew up, like you don't think you're going to be on Broadway. You don't think you're going to be like, in LA. You're not going to be like this movie star because you're like, at least in my purview, like you're from Ponca City. Like it's going to take a lot for you to get there. And it just like that program really made you feel like that was possible. And I think that's the piece that like I do still love to be a part of. And one reason like I answer those calls. But as far as like actively seeking out, state programs and like I'll be honest, I don't know when the national pageant even is really. Like I don't really, like that kind of stuff, not super in tune with. But I think there's remnants of that piece that is really like magical, that at least for like small town girls, like there was something there that was very special.
Yeah, totally. I talk about this on, I think it was on a previous podcast episode where it was just a solo episode. And I talked about how when I was a kid, one of the best parts of being in pageants was that I got to ride in a car on the 4th of July and like wear a crown and wave at kids who like I go to school with who thought that I was ugly or like, just this person who was going to do nothing. And, by God, I proved it to them that, like
you were something.
Yeah, exactly. It was totally this like very quintessential, like American dream sort of story that, I think the Miss America organization in particular allows you to sort of think is possible for you, which again, is definitely a part of the magic and the I guess draw that a lot of women have towards it. So
it's the girl next door. It is exactly the girl next door, and that's always been the allure. That's like you can live next to Miss America in the middle of nowhere, and like that, like, and it goes both ways. You can be the Miss America that lives next to your normal neighbors that you're used to being next to in normal America, rural America.
Right.
So there is that allure there that I do think is really special, but I hope if it keeps continuing, keep facilitating, because I think that's the really like beauty of it is like it's not, I'm not trying to like slam like Kardashians or anything. It's just like it's not about like full on looks. It's not about full on, like outer anything. It is it really there's a beauty there that encompasses like, how are you as a community member? And like, you can be that person that feels really real.
Yeah, definitely. It's like, we still want to make sure you're not a total piece of shit, which I think that's great. So kind of segueing into, other parts of your life, which you just had a very big part of your life or big life moment happen. So you recently got married. Let's talk about the parallels from pageantry to your wedding day. I feel like I could talk about this for years. I talk about it with my therapist basically on the regular. I would love to know if this existed for you on your pageant or on your pageant day. Holy fuck, are you kidding me? On your wedding day? I'm screaming. I would love to know if that existed for you and just sort of what you maybe were taking in during your wedding day where you were like, that is reminiscent of that thing I did a while back.
Honestly, this probably goes back to being more control freaks than anything, but like when I think of my wedding day, like it was not like I was like, oh, like take it all. Like it was like, who is where they need to be, and is everything happening, and where is so and so, and why aren't they like it was not like this like idyllic like,
oh totally, yeah,
like cloud nine, but that's probably more of my personality. But I don't think pageants helped lighten that up a little. And I would say like the piece that, looking back, I didn't realize was such a big tie is I don't want to use the word performance, but like is the like, what are people gonna think?
Yes. Oh my God. Yeah.
It's like, if like, I remember having, what was it? It was like some type of umbrella or something where I was like, oh, is that like a social norm? Like, are people gonna think I'm not like, this like belle that knows like all of the like etiquette? And like, I don't remember what it was, but it was something like that where I had like a mini freak out because I was like, are people gonna think I'm like this like country bumpkin that like doesn't understand wedding norms? And like there was so much of that is just like, how am I going to present the best version of myself, granted for your, at least I envision doing it because I'm like, I want to make my spouse look good. Like, I don't want to look like the country bumpkin because he looks amazing, and I don't want the perception to be that I am not up to par or whatever. But I think like there's very, very parallel paths with pageants of what are you presenting to the world, whether you know these people or not, or whether you know them well, or whether they know you well, and whether you've been able to like really let loose and them get to know you. What are the little things that they will see, not necessarily on a stage, but in remnants, that is similar to pageants in like, basically, how can I be most perfect?
Yeah.
It's sure a recipe for like, I don't want to say like not happiness, it was the best day of my life, but just like there's a lot of similar paths that's like, it makes it real hard to like sit back and be like, what a beautiful, beautiful moment and day, when all you're thinking about is what's everyone else going to think of me with what I have put together here.
Right. Yeah, totally. I remember telling my therapist shortly after we got married that it was in fact not the best day of my life. And really the only reason I say that is because, I mean, of course we had a beautiful day. It was lovely. I enjoyed basically every moment of it. What I didn't enjoy was the crippling anxiety that I had before. I mean, I damn near had a panic attack before I walked down the aisle. My spouse and I did not do a first look, which I regret immensely. Oh my God, it sucks.
We did a first touch.
I wish that we had done something that was like a first anything.
Yeah.
Because I think like to your point, so much of a wedding actually is a performance. I always say to people, I've had a few people who have said to me, well, your wedding's not like a big spectacle you're putting on or whatever. And I go, actually, that's exactly what the fuck it is. And if you're talking to anybody who says differently, they weren't the bride. Like, they literally weren't the bride.
And they also are probably the people that said something shitty about your wedding behind your back. Did you see those programs? They're only one-sided.
Yeah, 100%. And like, so I think that I mean, I just got so nervous before we walked down the aisle. I remember my dad like looking at me and was like, take a deep breath. Like, cause I was like, I was shaking. I was like breathing shallow. I was pacing in this room that I had to wait in upstairs, just like
Right.
doing laps
Yep.
because I was so nervous, and not even nervous to see Ty or walk down the aisle, or like was not nervous at all for, the impending marriage I'm walking into,
The
like, which
lifelong
is,
commitment.
yeah, the thing that, most people would probably be shitting their pants over. No, I was freaking out because I wanted to be sure that all 225 people there thought that I was the prettiest, best version of myself.
Skinniest.
Yep,
Your hair was in
skinniest,
every hair is
hottest.
in place.
Yep, exactly.
No
Like,
lipstick on your teeth.
yep, totally. And like, just that I looked like I was a perfect Barbie that had just walked out of this like, fucking machine that made me. Like, I
100%.
was so nervous that, and one thing that I laugh about now, but I was really, really super self-conscious about right after our wedding, was that my face was so puffy because I had just been drinking all week essentially. Like, we had like a welcome party on Thursday. I got
Uh,
shit-faced at that. Friday was the rehearsal, but my friend from Miami was in town. So like we got toasted that night. Like, so I was just like drunk for like 3 days, which
yeah.
it was so fun, but it was like I had the puffiest face of my life. I could not ice roll that shit away. And
Yep. Yep.
I was so hungover. Like I like by
Our
the
pills won't do it.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh no, yeah. By the time Sunday rolled around, I was like, this is never going to end, this hangover. Like, but it was, I'm so glad that I had something that, like, in hindsight, I'm so glad that I had something that was like objectively not perfect, because I think the rest of the day was like very, very well. Like, nothing went wrong really. Like, everything was pretty good. Um, and I think having that sort of moment where I looked at pictures of myself and was like, oh, maybe I wasn't like the best version of myself, really helped to put the entire thing into perspective for me and be like, okay, maybe I shouldn't give it as much weight as I had given it, for all of the months and years leading up to it, which is obviously hard to do as a woman. But, I think that just made a difference to not have to be like, oh, I'm going to put all my eggs in this basket of this day being the best of my entire life. And now from here,
Yeah.
it's all downhill. So yeah.
I'm so glad you said that because I have felt very similar things to exactly what you're
Yeah.
saying. Where it's like I see pictures, like so we get our pictures back, and like there's so many pictures where I'm like, I look like such a bitch. Like I look so mad, like so many. And like there's just so many things where I'm like, I was just trying like it's okay, like
Yeah.
it's okay. Like it doesn't have to be this like and same situation with yours. There was no rain. There was no like, oh,
Yeah.
you beat Texas that day, which was the biggest thing I was concerned about. Like there's a
Perfect.
number of things that like could have gone wrong, did not go wrong. And it was just like I was in my own head for a lot of
Yeah.
the day. And then after the ceremony, which interestingly enough, just like you, it's like funny that like the most monumental part of that day was the easiest for you, which is like, oh,
Yeah.
I marry my husband, like
Yeah.
I like be registered in the county of deeds that like we are literally married and we
Yeah.
file joint taxes now. Like that was the easiest part.
Right.
It was
Exactly.
a
And how
lot, but
telling. Yeah.
yeah. But I'm so glad you say this because there's so many paths that are similar to me, which is just like, and it's like you can't even really look back and be like, man, I wish I would have chilled out. Because it's like that's not necessarily me. Like,
Yeah.
and like we have these life situations that like didn't really like if we wanted to chill out, we would have eloped. Like,
100%. Yeah. I'm not really like a chill person. I don't know if
yeah,
anybody's
no.
heard that at this point, but like I'm not really a chillaxed girl. Like, I
Maybe
have
that's why we didn't win.
chronic
That's
anxiety. Yes.
why we didn't win our states.
Exactly. I'm gonna tell everybody that now. That's
We
why.
would have been the chill girl. We would have been Miss Iowa and Miss Kansas.
Exactly. I would have had to go to Miss America as a chill girl.
Right? God.
Amazing. So I want to kind of switch gears into less pageantry content, because there's another side of you that I want to give space and talk about, which is, and this side I think is just like the coolest thing ever. So you work in the world of e-commerce, and you have for many years, and you have several of your own businesses. Talk about like just the general gist of building those businesses, what that's been like for you. Also, are you still a part of corporate America technically?
Thank God, I'm a recovering corporate American. So
Okay,
no.
that's what I thought because of your podcast name.
Yeah.
Yeah, your own
That was
podcast.
my own personal therapy. Yeah.
Yes. So I'd love to know kind of how your businesses maybe prompted the exit of corporate America.
Yeah. So basically I had my one business, the traveling mess,
Right.
for like when I started when I was 21. And as I said, like had quite the like big life shakeup when I was like, wow, hard work no longer means anything. And that's just a general assumption of my own
Right.
worldview. That's not
I get it.
reality. Like, and so I was dealing with this weird situation. And to be honest, there was a big pressure, not necessarily exactly from my family, but like people that are like, look, you have a successful business, but health insurance. And
Mhm.
you're only on ours until you're like 26 and you need to start figuring stuff out. And I was like, man, like I thought I was doing well. And it was almost like insult to injury. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I can't win the pageant I thought I was. And then on top of that, I am not doing as well as I thought I was. And so anyways, I learned a lot of e-commerce skills starting my own business. And so that actually got me into the corporate world. Is I still had that business. It was doing well, all of that. But I basically felt like this need from external pressure, like it's not going to be enough. And so I
Mhm.
started going into corporate. Absolutely fucking hated it immediately. Immediately felt like a soulless terror. Like I was just like, how do people live their life in these situations? Like this is the saddest thing I've ever, like it was just the biggest shakeup
Yeah.
ever. And I hated every second of it. On top of the prevailing like flailing, like who am I? What do I do? Like everything I've known about myself is not real. Like on
Yeah.
top of this like self-identity crisis. And ended up like going through a few different places, and then got to one of my most recent places that actually started to kind of bring that piece of me back, almost like I got my mojo back,
Mhm.
where it was like this perfect set of environment at the time that did start to be like, you are valuable, you're bringing valuable things to the table, we want to hear what you have to say, we want to give you more responsibility. And it did start to like almost like foster back, okay, this is like the Cari Anne I always was. And ended up working my way up to like, I started as a manager, like second from the bottom, and ended up becoming a vice president at that company when I was 26. Had a team of over 50, most much more experienced, much like in every way, shape, or form, better resumes, like deserved to be there. And for whatever reason, I was in this position. And I feel like at that point, my worldview started to change in the sense of like, okay, I got my mojo back in the sense of I now know if I really work hard, I can achieve this, and I'll outwork anyone. Like I was on my laptop till 2 a.m. I was there at the office at like 5:30, wouldn't leave till 8. Like I was like, I'll outwork anyone. But my worldview really started to change at that moment, especially getting more people on my team of like values.
Mm.
Because like I grew up in a very small business. My dad like had a 40-person operation, like American manufacturer, pouring metal into molds, like
Yeah.
American factory. Not a single person in his building had a college degree. And it was just very old school in a good way of like, you treat your salespeople well, you treat your people well. Like my dad's biggest thing was his biggest cost was health insurance way before Obamacare. So that
Yeah.
was like before anyone was even making him do anything. He was
Mhm.
like, I got to prioritize people that don't have college degrees. Lots of them he hired from like the halfway house that no one else would.
Mhm.
Like those type of people my dad believed in. And so at that point, when I started to rise in corporate, it became this crisis of values.
Mm.
Like you see how they treat people, you see how just like the carelessness in lots of decisions, not
Yeah.
only people, but like a lot of stuff I was seeing, like this isn't how you would run a small business because you can afford to. Like it's
Right.
just there was so much of it that just started to weigh on me. And I found a lot of like shelter in protecting my team, where I was like, I'm gonna be like the shield from this chaos. Like
Yeah.
I'm gonna be the one that like fosters a good environment and a team. And I hope I did that. I'm still very close with most of my team, but like there was that side that like really opened my eyes into first, corporate is not the place for me.
Yeah.
It is not the place for me. It does not agree with anything I think I believe in. And it's not meant for me. Like, I'm an entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
so it's really at that moment a few years ago, like right in the middle or right after COVID, I would say, that I was like, I'm an entrepreneur. I've always been an entrepreneur. I don't agree with this. And it's time to like do that.
Mhm.
And I'm going to make a lot less money. I'm going to have to pay for my health insurance. All
Yeah.
of the things that like I've never had to do in the last handful of years, I'm going to have to do. And like, I need to do it. And so, I mean, it hasn't been easy, like by any means.
Yeah.
Good God, like it just feels like I'm coming into my own skin,
Mm.
and I'm like starting to like feel that like happiness and like childlike wonder of like being an entrepreneur again. That just like is like, this is where I'm meant to be. This is where I'm meant to be. And my goal is like, I'm trying to just keep doing this to hire a team, because I'm
Yeah.
like, this is what makes me like passionate, is like I want to get to a place that I'm in such a good place I can start hiring people like my old team back. That's like,
Yeah.
hey, we're creating a place that doesn't suck, that
Mhm.
like can make money, you can be profitable, you can do all these things and still support people and foster great relationships, and not be soulless and terrible. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if that answers your question entirely, but like that's the path I'm on now. I just launched a new brand like 4 months now ago, called Kitten Canvas, and it's a paint by numbers for adults.
Oh,
Um,
amazing. Yeah.
and I don't even remember exactly the moment that I came into it, but somehow I started realizing like this is an opportunity that I was interested in, and I bought some samples and I took it home, and I was doing it one night. I was painting my adult by numbers, or paint by numbers for adults, and it was so therapeutic.
Yeah.
And so then I fell in this journey of like, oh my gosh, there's so much mental health benefits for adults. That's
Yeah.
like, it gives you this relief for like however long you want to do it for. That's
Yeah.
like, you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to think
Mhm.
about yourself, and not in a selfish way. I mean, like even when you go to therapy, you're having to think about yourself and
No,
your future and
100%.
your relationships. You don't have to think about yourself. You don't have to think about your bill. Like, it gives you one thing to focus on, and and I'm speaking for myself personally. Like, I was like, man, this could do some real good for
Yeah.
people that want to just turn their brain off for like a second.
Mm. Yeah.
And so that's my new brand. So long
I
story
love
short,
it.
still have Traveling Miss. I have Kitten Canvas now, which I'm loving. Like I said, it's just like this like childlike wonder. Like it's really like invigorating to have this other brand that I've been starting, that like it almost feels like a culmination of like all of my experiences in the last few years of like,
Yeah.
can help someone in corporate that like is in a shitty situation come
Yeah.
home and just like get away from it. It's like,
Totally.
it just feels purposeful, and I'm really excited about this.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that. I'll have to go and buy one because I my latest thing is that, well, first of all, I buy anything that promises some kind of like mental health relief because I
Yeah.
too I'm in corporate America and I fucking hate it. It is the most soul-sucking, like just mind fucking awful place on the planet. I can't wait to get out of it. I that's a whole other topic for another day,
Man, I
but
haven't met a single person that's like, man, I love being
oh,
a
100%. Yeah, no, totally. And you know what? I haven't met, I'm going to add to that. I haven't met a single person I like who is like, I love corporate America. And
or
I'm
like, I'm really
like,
content. Like, it's a fine company. And you're like, it's not a fine company, you asshole. Like,
like none of them are
yeah,
really.
yeah.
But I recently bought one of those. It's called Paint Gem, and it's like the gem painting.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is, holy shit, it is
You
so
like it?
therapeutic. And
Yeah.
it reminds me a lot of when I was younger, we would because I grew up at a time where like my family didn't really have a ton of money at the time. And like we were very much, I mean, I shouldn't say like we weren't like, at the poverty line or anything, but like we were definitely like kind of bootstrapping it
Yeah.
through the baton competitions and all the shit that I was doing. It's probably why we were not having a ton of money. And so my mom and I would always stone my baton costumes by hand because
Oh, cool.
it was like exponentially more expensive if you paid
Oh, stupid
the
expensive.
company to do
Yeah.
it. So we would just do it by hand. And it reminded me so much of that. And I was like, shit, that was so therapeutic. I totally
Huh?
forgot about that.
It's
So
so
I
therapeutic.
love that. That's amazing.
It
Um,
gives you exactly like and one thing I keep coming back to as I've been like working on like what the brand stands for is like what the phrase that keeps coming to mind is like you have everything you need to succeed. You know how
mm,
to count, you know how to match a number to a number, and you have
yeah.
hands and a
Hmm.
brain that works. Like that you have like you don't need lessons, you don't need a subscription, you don't need Wi-Fi, you don't need
Yeah.
like you have everything you need to be happy in this moment. And it's
Yeah.
just focus with skills you already have. So it reminds me of like it sounds simplistic, but it's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So last question for you, and then we'll move into the World War, World Peace section. But I'm curious to know, as somebody who's left corporate America and you were incredibly successful in it, like, so you could have stayed if you wanted, but you made this very conscious decision based on values to leave. If you were to come in contact with somebody, and I'm asking this selfishly, purely, if you were to come into contact with somebody who's like, I want out, like how I have to get out of corporate America, what is your like gut reaction to that? Your first piece of advice that you're going to tell them?
I don't want to sound pessimistic, but it's there is not really an answer. Like
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, like
Yeah.
and that's one reason I'm so passionate about trying to start a new model that makes a lot of sense. um there's not the easiest answer.
Yeah.
To be honest, I would say if there are people like that, which is so many people,
Yeah.
taking a look at your local businesses, small to medium sized businesses, and if you are okay, if your family is in a situation to be okay taking a pay cut,
Mm-hmm.
looking at jobs that most people like you and I that went to college that were told like college is the way to for life and you got to have your resume,
Yeah.
whatever. Looking at jobs that don't have an impressive title, don't maybe seem beneath you, whatever, like your local receptionist at a local accountant
Mm-hmm.
firm.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be honest, at this point in life, I would say that is my answer. Is because they're
Mm-hmm.
not the clearest of answers. Like even if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to have a lot of money. It's really
Yeah.
hard to bootstrap, especially if you have a family. It
Yeah.
like it if you want to be an entrepreneur, it's not going to be over. It's not going to be quick at all. It's going to be
Right.
it's going to be grueling in a financial position. Like it's a lot of it's really difficult. And I'm even speaking from that right now. Like
Yeah.
even just breaking even is hard. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would say like people that because I talk to a lot of people like this that are just like, man, I got to get out of corporate. And it's like the more you can be in a place that isn't soulless. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's people in your community that are not shitty,
Mm-hmm.
that don't have a gajillion employees where they know no one's name. People, local places, local accounting firms, local law firms, local dentists. Like if you want to be happy, that's not corporate. Like check your ego at the door,
Yeah.
and be okay being a receptionist. Be okay being like the dog kennel person at your local humane society. And if you're in a position to be able to take a pay cut, like that's likely gonna have to come with it. But like it is like small to medium businesses is where you should look and be open to whatever, because
Yeah.
it's the people, it's the multinational corporations, it's the private equity. It's like you hear of brands nowadays that sound like household brands. They're owned by these stupid large companies that are just trying to flip it. Like,
Right.
and it's like if that's the problem, unfortunately at this point I would say the answer is like try to find something, check your ego at the door,
Yeah.
that is not that is like a
Private
small
equity.
local presence, like
Yeah.
and take what you can get. Like a job's just a job. Like that's
Mm.
the thing, like that's the thing that corporate helps you realize is like you're not solving world hunger working
Yeah.
for anyone unless you're working for a nonprofit. Like like
Yeah.
so
Totally.
it's a job's a job. Like if you need to clean out kennels for 9 hours a day and you can make like 10% less than you're making now, and you know your boss and your boss's boss, and that's the only people in the company, like, may
Yeah.
not be a terrible gig.
Yeah. I love that. That's such a good, that's such a realistic piece of advice, because I think so many people are under the impression that, well, A, that entrepreneurship is easy, and it's not. It is far from it. Um, and I think another thing people are under the impression of is that, like, corporate America does a really, really good job of selling a dream, or selling a vision of
Lifestyle.
a life, yeah, of a life that is different, or that is, luxurious or
Easier.
whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. And like, I think what I've come to realize is, when I remember when I first got into the tech industry, I was like, I have fucking made it. Like, I
Same.
was so
Oh, same.
excited. Oh my God. I thought I was just like the
On
bee's
top of the world.
knees. Yeah. And I was like, I've got this dope salary. I've got
Yep.
health insurance. I've got a 401k.
401k. Yep.
Yeah. They gave me an office stipend. They paid for my fucking like
Yep.
walking
You get
pad that I keep.
PTO.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just
Yep.
thought it was like the dopest shit of all time. And then I remember at the first tech company I worked for, I was I was very young. I was like, I don't know, 26 maybe or something. And I went to Atlanta for a work conference, and it was my first ever like big kid conference. Like, I had never been to one before. And I ended up writing a blog post about it because it was so jarring. Like, the entire experience was so miserable, and made me realize that no one is protecting you. Nobody really has your back in the corporate world. And it also made me leave that job. Like, I got absolutely toasted one night at this conference. And by the way, because they're feeding you
Yep.
booze like that.
Yeah.
That's part of it.
Bar everywhere. Yeah.
And then I remember we got back and nothing happened, like I didn't put myself in danger. I didn't put anybody else in danger, whatever. And we got back, and I remember my boss at the time, the VP of sales of this company, she had a one-on-one with me, and she was like, you might just want to like watch it next time, and maybe like consider, how much booze you're having. And I was like, why didn't you say that though? Like, I know that this conversation's not happening with any of the men that were at this event. I know it's not,
Right.
because I asked them, like,
Yep.
so I think
Yep.
for me, it was like, that was a really pivotal moment where I was like, okay, this is fucked up. And then I just kind of kept having those moments of being like, this
Uh-huh.
is fucked up. This is fucked up, like over and over again,
Uh-huh.
until now I'm at the point where like, I feel like I could step into a one-on-one with my boss and like just flip my desk at any given moment and be like, I'm fucking leaving. Like,
Yep.
like it's just
Yep.
like, you reach a point where you are so done that you don't even care if you get fired.
You almost want them to. You're like, write
Exactly. Yeah.
severance.
Like, give me severance. Yeah. Exactly. I'm like,
Please
oh,
hire me. I'm
Cobra.
begging you.
I'm gonna need that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's so funny to me that like we all get to that point where we're like, yes, corporate America, this is so exciting. Tech companies, Silicon Valley, can't wait, love it. And then by the end of it, we're like, fuck this, man. I will go
Yep.
work at the vet down the street.
Seriously. Like,
I will be a barista again. I don't care. So,
it's exactly how it goes. Like the number
yeah.
of like, I have a number of hairdresser friends, and I'm like, you are living the fucking life. You
Yes.
you are so happy. You make your own hours. You don't have 50 grand in student like
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. Like
Yeah.
dental assistants, there's welders, like you can name for hours the
Yeah.
people like that for our generation growing up, you were told like that's not success. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm here to say like that is success. Like
100%.
they are the ones that got it right. And it was because they didn't listen to other people, maybe, but like that they're getting it right. And most people are getting it wrong, thinking like corporate is what is success. And it turns
Mm-hmm.
out like this weird Black Mirror situation where you're like, oh no, like corporate is the worst. And
Literally.
I've been working my whole life to get in this moment when
Yeah.
I could do something else that maybe doesn't have a prestige in our
Yeah.
society, but will make me a lot happier and most likely more money.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy.
It's so nuts. None of this is real. It's all
I
fake.
know, right?
Like everything's a simulation. Okay, amazing. So let's do a little round of World War or World Peace. So, for those listening who don't know what this section is, it is a section of the show based off of, you guessed it, experiences in pageantry, world peace, name of the show. You can put all of that together. And I bring topics to the person who I'm interviewing, who the topics are, they relate to the person that I'm interviewing. And we decide if they are world war or world peace, if they're conducive to world war or world peace. Okay, so the first one, I literally just like had to laugh when I was writing this down. Miss America 2.0.
World War. Easy. Like, I don't even have to think for 2 seconds.
That was the quickest answer to any segment I've ever done.
Because it's over, right? Like, we're past that, right?
It's done, right? Like,
yeah, we're past that, right?
Giving
Like,
it a
we
few more
can all
years.
forget about it for a while. Yeah.
100%.
Hard World War. I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize. I'm not going to say sorry, Gretchen Carlson.
No.
Like, no, it sucked. It was terrible. It was a terrible decision. You thought you were doing well, and it did not work in any way, shape, or form.
Also, like throwback to Gretchen Carlson. I wrote down in this document, it says Gretchen what's her face. I couldn't remember her last name. Oh my God, what a throwback though. I remember being so fucking lit when she became I was so excited, dude.
I was so excited.
And then I was like, whoa, this woman's so fucking scary. Like
such a like I was saying, I was ready to rally, and then just failure after like let's start here. Anytime you have to say your brand and then 2.0 says you're not doing a good job.
Yes, says the brand is dead.
You have to spell out 2.0. You're not winning. Like,
right.
It's not a rebrand if you're just saying like, hey, it's the Miss America rebrand.
Yeah, right.
You're already not doing a good job.
Yeah.
Big fail.
Oh my God. Amazing. Love that we can agree on the 2.0 not being the best branding decision that Miss America has made. Yeah. Okay, second one is Alibaba.
Ooh,
an ecom person.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
By the way, for people who don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna go world peace for now, just because it's the best solution
option
for now. Like there are so many flaws with it. I could go on and on and on about it, but it does serve the purpose for today and until someone else does it better, which I would hope someone does.
For sure.
I'm gonna go world peace for now. There's tons of problems. I could talk about it for a very long time, but for now it does serve a purpose.
Amazing. Okay, and I've technically got two more. Like, well, I technically only have one more, but I want to ask you a fourth one. So the next one is we touched on it earlier, Voy Forums. I literally one of my girlfriends mentioned Voy on her close friend story on Instagram today, and I had forgotten all about it. I was like, holy shit, I forgot that I used to spend an egregious amount of time on Voy Forums. I spent
and then you would hide that you actually looked at. You're like, no one can see I actually look at these.
100%. I would clear it from my browser
and delete the browser history. Yep.
Oh my God.
Wait, I've never heard of it. Huh?
I know what Voy is. Or I would be like, I'm not watching Voy. I'm not looking at Voy and seeing like during Miss Iowa week when sure as fuck I was looking to see what people were
every day.
Insane. Okay, so what are our thoughts?
Oh man, this one's also hard because like you know what? I'm gonna have a hot take here. And I'm gonna say world peace. You know why? Because it's like not that like pageants is sports, but like, you know, if you're competitors like us, you want to know what the pundits are saying about your skills and your performance. And so if this is going to be a hot take, it's obviously breed for bullying. And make no mistake, there is a line of like, you can never create an account and post as like one of us. Yeah. Other people do. But at the time, I'm actually going to go world peace in the sense of like when you were working hard and granted, they would also rip you apart as well. Like you would 100%. Hear your eyebrows are not whatever, or like you have like, I don't know, terrible stuff. Nonetheless. Yeah. I'm actually going to have a hot take here. I'm going to say it was world peace in the sense of like, it did validate your hard work at the time.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
I like that take because, I I totally understand that people who get online and have like keyboard courage and like hide behind their screen and are like, you know, so and so's bathing suit was up her ass. Like
Right.
when they're like, when they're the ones who are like, just huge pieces of shit, like, whatever.
Talking
And
about how your entire body and your face
yeah, and people are just
symmetry.
talking
Yeah.
shit about, and they've done nothing in their community and nothing to like make themselves maybe a better person in some regard. And and so I never want to condone like that behavior,
Same.
right? Of being
Very, very true.
okay, you know,
There's nothing admirable about what you're
yeah,
doing.
exactly. It's the same how I feel about like Reddit boards and stuff because like I feel like people on Reddit are insane. Like they just like, especially like the pop culture like threads on Reddit where people talk
Yeah.
about celebrities and like, shit like that,
Yeah.
whatever. So I'm never going to condone that. However, I will say I agree with you that when you are a competitor and you are, really wanting to understand where other people's heads are at about who they think is going to win and who therefore the judges might think is going to win.
Yeah.
I loved that shit. I
I
loved
did
the
too. I did too.
validation. I loved being able to see people's top five predictions. I
Same.
loved being able, like, because back in the day, let's be honest, Miss America was a fucking sport. It was
It
the Super
was.
Bowl for a lot
Yeah.
of people. And it may not be now to the same degree that it was then, but oh my God, the golden years of like 20, I don't know, 2008,
15,
like all
9.
the way to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like to like
Oh yeah. 8. Yeah.
Oh, oh my God. Those were like the golden years of Miss
Yep.
America. We had the internet. And oh my God, it was fucking awesome. We had the internet.
Chris Harrison. We had Chris Harrison still.
Yeah, we had Chris Harrison. We had like the inception of social media becoming kind of a part of, the Miss America forte and like, Savvy Shields
Hmm.
coming in and Mallory Hagan and like all these dope ass
Yep.
people who were becoming
Yep.
America. And like Voy during that time was the fucking
Lit.
best. It
It
was
was
so
so
lit.
entertaining. It was
I
it's
loved
almost like
it.
reminiscent of like the early ages of like our generation coming into the internet of like
Yes.
you're logging on to like your MySpace and
AOL.
like yeah like it was very reminiscent of like that nostalgic like early internet
Yes.
culture that
Yeah.
like definitely had toxicity to it but like was still like addicting and
Yeah, for sure.
like
For
a
sure.
joy to like pull up
Yeah,
but
totally.
so,
Okay, I would love to know, lastly, this is just kind of like off the cuff. I'm just curious. What are your thoughts on Miss USA now? Like now that I feel like Miss USA is like kind of taking a turn for the better. Like they're definitely being like more inclusive. They're doing,
mhm,
I think trans women are allowed to compete, which is
mhm,
amazing. They seem to be more inclusive of like other body types, which is
yeah
awesome.
yeah.
Um, do you think that like Miss USA is still an outdated concept in terms of like what it represents? And do you think that they're just trying to be like Miss America, like what Miss America was essentially?
So I will say I'm not like the most versed in like
Totally.
who because I know like ownership has changed hands on like both
Mhm.
sides. Like so I don't I'm not the most informed, but I will say like the outside little remnants I get. It like I'm trying to remember what year it was. I want to say it was actually Chesley Chris year, maybe the year
Oh
before.
yeah. Was that like
But
2017 maybe?
it was probably around there.
Mhm.
I do remember watching the national competition, and I remember thinking they get it.
Yeah.
They get like the modern woman and
Hmm.
how you brand like this celebrity of a
Yeah.
position and how it can be both beautiful and intelligent and confident and like a story to it. Like I remember whatever year, and it might have not been that exact year, but it was somewhere around there. I remember watching it and being like, this is if Miss America had people that really were in tune with today and
Yeah.
like branding and marketing and running a business. That is like I remember thinking like, man, they're doing a good job.
Hmm.
And I do feel like they've from the little I get, they seem to kind of be on that path. And like you said, I do keep hearing about how they're like way more inclusive. I will say, speaking as a 5'2" 2.5" woman, I always was in the camp of like Miss USA is cool and all. And like I even remember that year being like, man, they're really getting the message. but still it's like, I could never be Miss USA. Like I could never be Miss USA, and I'm not a supermodel. Like I'm like, there's a difference between like being like model and being like a role model, you know, like,
totally. Yeah.
I feel like Miss America has always been like, anyone can be, not anyone, but like, like you can be a role model.
Yeah,
And you don't have to be this like very, very, very rarity of your looks, in your height, in your face, in your haircut, like everything that is like, you're going to get a modeling contract. It's like, I knew the second I was born, that was never going to be me.
Right.
And so I do feel like, and this is just selfishly, like, I do feel like for them to get to that level, that makes me feel like, wow, it's that like, that really wholesome, good stuff I want to keep watching and supporting, is like, okay, I don't have to be born looking a certain way. And that's all it comes. It's just like, my parents don't have to be however tall. My face doesn't have to be as symmetric as it is. Like, I don't have to whatever eye color. I don't have to, like, I think what would really make me feel like they've turned a new leaf is watching it and thinking like, this person in an everyday situation wouldn't get a modeling contract with a big name, you know, big name brand, and they wouldn't be a Victoria's Secret model, but they can now be Miss USA. I feel like that's the piece that like, I selfishly, I would love to see, but just outside looking in, I would say it seems like have been doing a good job of of making it modern in a way that resonates with people, that doesn't feel archaic and outdated, in like, you're just prancing around in a bikini, and like, that's not, you know, progressive. I think they did a good job of that fine line from like the most recent years I've seen. But like I said, outside looking in, but everything I did recently, it looked promising.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like Miss USA for so many years. And again, I'm kind of like pretty removed from it. I competed one time in the Miss USA system, and it was so interesting because everyone, regardless of like hair color, skin color, body type, everybody kind of had the same look to them. You know what I mean? Like, it was really interesting. Like, everybody kind of looked the same. Like, they all did their hair the same way. They all did their makeup the same way. It was like they all got walking lessons from the same person. So bizarre. And then everybody had those fucking clunky hoof looking Chinese laundry heels. Oh my God. I can't believe I still have mine. And I'm like,
me too.
What the fuck am I going to do with these things? Like, nobody's going to buy these for me. Like, no one wears these anymore. So yeah, it was like, they all wore those. And then everybody had like, you know, the most expensive, like McDougal suit or whatever for, you know, but it was always like a low V suit in the front and it was like a sexy interview outfit. You were like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
It was so bizarre. So anyway, I just think you definitely hit that correctly. Like, if they all didn't look the same, I would be more inclined to believe that we were on the right path with something there.
It's like, it reminds me of this quote. There's this John Mayer quote, and I'm gonna get it wrong, but it's like essentially like, people that like, it's just being pretty. It's like, oh, congrats for being born the way you are.
Yeah, exactly.
And not that like if you're a beautiful woman, like, that's amazing. Like, try to get your hand out of that, but like, it does feel like that competition in my mind was always like, congrats for being born.
Yeah, for sure.
Instead of like, Miss America felt like, congrats for like working in your community and working your ass off at like a talent or whatever. And I'm painting with a very broad brush here, so make no mistake, I respect people on both sides. And like I said, I definitely see it moving in a very modern way with Miss USA. It's just that growing up, I would say I never thought I could ever be Miss USA, because it's congrats for being born. Versus Miss America, it's like, you can work to be Miss America.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. There are tangible changes you can make in your life to become Miss America. Whereas Miss USA, it's sort of like,
you either have it or you don't.
Well, you're shit out of luck if you're ugly, you know?
Exactly. So, you're fine too. Like, what are you doing here?
Exactly. For sure. Oh, Cari Anne, thank you so much for joining me and for being here. I loved chatting with you again and just gabbing about pageants and shit. I love it. Before we wrap up, tell everybody where they can find you. Instagram, website, plug your new brand, all the shit. Plug it now.
I'm open to free promotion. Heck yeah, let's go. Well, my own personal stuff's just like Cari Anne Cash, Carianne Cash. But if anyone is interested in paint by numbers for adults, Kit and Canvas, that's KIT and Canvas on Amazon, is my new brand. So definitely appreciate anyone supporting. Like I said, speaking for myself, very therapeutic. Been having a grand old time with it. But yeah, either way, just like to connect with everyone.
Amazing. Oh, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is so fun. Very therapeutic. This is great.
Amazing. I love it.